Opening program parameters. Player code established. Welcome to the program. A production of themetalrobot.com.
Nobody cares about the robot gimmick. Just start the fucking show already.
Humans are determined assholes. This is the Metal Robot Podcast. Initializing playback.
Welcome to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast, a podcast about all things metal and everything in between. It's been a couple of days, and I know I'm still feeling the buzz from St. Paddy's Day, though I think for me it's just internal Scottish resentment that there's not an International William Wallace Day instead. My breath smells like haggis and my blood tastes like freedom. Chug, chug, chug! Alas, maybe one day. In the meantime, though, we've got a great show for you today. Episode 22 of the show, to be exact. Dark Funeral released their new album, We Are the Apocalypse. We'll talk about that and other new releases. Then I sat down with JJ Tartaglia of Thunderor, Fist and Operus to talk about, well, that and 80s metal. Metal news of the week to follow, and ending the show with a special project. 15-plus artists around the world gathering together to make some metal music. Guilherme Adriano, also known as the GJ, is the founder of this idea, and I sit down with him to talk more about it. Let's not waste much more time, and let's get into the show. I'm Tom McKay, and this is the Metal Robot Podcast.
You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
Welcome to the program, the Metal Robot Podcast. I'm your host, Tom McKay, and like I said in the beginning, St. Paddy's Day just passed by, and yet somehow I'm not reviewing any Irish bands this week. Though, who knows, maybe there's someone in any of these bands that are Irish, or just think that they're Irish because they tried green beer for the first time and didn't get the plague shortly after. But still, I'm sure some of these bands will intrigue you. Let's find out which ones. If you have any albums you want me to talk about on future episodes of the podcast, send me an email, tmckay@themetalrobot.com. That's TMCKAY at themetalrobot.com. Or you can reach out on socials, Facebook and Twitter at The Metal Robot, Instagram at the.metalrobot. Now, without further ado, let's take a look at what we've got. Do I even need an introduction here? I feel like Dark Funeral is one of those black metal bands that just need to be shown rather than talked about, much like Mayhem, Abath, and Ragnarok. But okay, fine, I'll do my job. Sometimes I wonder why you tolerate my laziness. We Are the Apocalypse, the brand new album from Swedish black metal band Dark Funeral, or as their website calls them, the ineffable kings of black metal. A bit much of the tooting one's horn, but who am I to judge? Not much is different about this album compared to the last album, Where Shadows Forever Reign, but this is the first album with new members Yalama on the drums and Adramelech on the bass. Great, so that means something probably changed, right? Actually, no. While I'm not the most familiar with Dark Funeral, I did do an A-B comparison of this album and the last album, and there really wasn't much of a noticeable difference. But production-wise, there's a noticeable difference. It's cleaner this time around. Now, I know how that sounds. No, I don't mean Helion Mod finally got sprayed with holy water by the goody two-shoes neighbor kids. I mean, the production is more clear. It's more distinct. It's still some heavy black metal, but we're not in the old recorder cassette days. This is an album where the band got into the studio, laid down their tracks, and had the album mixed and mastered by professionals who I would argue actually don't usually deal with black metal this time out. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Yeah, I know, some will call blasphemy of the highest order for that, but listening to this album doesn't make me think that the dark Swedish lords are tainted with purity. It's still an evil-sounding album with very clear text and scripture. Take this lyric from When Our Vengeance Is Done, quote, "We shall invoke the ancient raging evil. Come let us feast upon the priest and drink their holy blood." Doesn't exactly sound like Father Tim got a hold of Dark Funeral. Actually, that lyric sounds like it's the other way around. Well, how about this one? "And when your wrists are open wide, you will lay your soul in a pitch black hole that's just as dark and cold as mine." Not exactly good old Sunday school values. So, calm down, black metal fans. Your spooky Swedish boys are fine. That being said, time to speak to the heretics. If you're not a black metal fan, then this is just another black metal album. It's not bad, it's not god tier either. I do enjoy this quite a bit though. It's actually one of the few black metal albums I might return to every so often. The thing about Swedish metal in general is that they know their way around hooks and melodies. Whether it's in the vocals, the guitars, or anything in general, the vast majority of Swedish metal I've heard has a great ear for melodic writing above just, "Here's a cool thing I did with the chugga chuggas, let's use it 40 times and call it a song." But believe me, non-black metal fans are probably not going to be going super gaga over this. It's not going to be everyone's first choice, and I wouldn't even say this is a black metal album to get people into the black metal genre. So I mean, it's probably a better starting point than A Blaze in the Northern Sky. No, shut up. You know I'm right. The soon-to-be unholy aren't ready for that shit yet. Just give it a sec, let the darkness crawl over them, and then get them on the hard stuff. But overall, We Are the Apocalypse, while not breaking any new ground, is a great black metal album from a great black metal band that black metal fans need to check out, and aspiring black metal musicians need to take note of for songwriting and for production. As for non-black metal fans, if you want to take a stab at this one, then you'll be okay to do so. Just remember though, with a 13 out of 15, it might decide to stab back. Tech death metal with Hellbore, which is also the name given to the mole on my lower back. It won't stop growing, and soon it'll turn into my own personal scrad.
Tell me something we don't know. Yeah, tell me something we don't. I am so sorry.
Hellbore just released their new album, Panopticon, which is a 40-minute, technically proficient monster of an album. Front to back, the dynamic duo of Chris Whitby and Charlie Monroe unleash power and fury that feels unmatched in its intensity. Though there is something interesting about this album. This is the second release from them since 2019's Holy Sadist, which featured more of a thrash element to their death metal rather than the technical death metal that we're getting with Panopticon. Some of those traits are still here, but it looks like Hellbore dived headfirst into that modern metal pool like a kid getting pushed into a vat of acid. The new album also features one of the things that I love most about the tech death genre. When done right, every song can feel unique compared to the others on the album. Same thing happens here. The modern metal scream singing of Angel Slayer, for example, or the jazz break of Terrorize, the bass break and the big chord breakdown of Necrocracy. And those are a few examples of each element that rarely repeats themselves throughout the album. And that's what I love about this. It's an album that doesn't take too long to get its point across, but it also allows each song to have a unique identity to it that you can't get in any other song. And also, the 3-track suite of Panopticon towards the end is also really great. It doesn't feel too dragged out, and it allows itself to set the tone and still give you a fucking gargantuan album in the process. I do think Panopticon 3 waited a bit longer than I would have liked to feature a top line of some kind, but it didn't detract too much from the rest of the suite, and even the rest of the album has more than made up for that little blight overall. So, overall, while I know tech death isn't for everyone, if you're thinking about flying into denser space, then Hellbore's got you covered. I think a solid 14 out of 15 is more than enough to get you into whatever this band has coming forth. So Grave Next Door's Sanctified Heathen. I got nothing. I don't have anything to offer here. I mean, it's okay, I guess, but that's not much of anything for a review. Let's check it out here. It's an okay stoner metal album that's done okay with nothing truly offensive about it. Fucking, I don't know what else to say here. Oh, you know what? There is one thing I can say about that here, and that is that the mix has betrayed this band.
You were the chosen one!
Again, compositionally, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with the writing on this album. Performance-wise, it's fine as well, though I feel the vocals were more drowsy than they needed to be. Look, I know it's a stoner metal band, but that doesn't mean you need to play the part. But no, the real problem that I'm having here is with the mix. The guitars are extra fuzzy, which is great for stoner metal, but the bass is also really quiet to the point it can't be felt on the subwoofers or even really heard. The drums are getting hit hard, but they're either turned down in the mix or drowned out by the guitars. And the vocals, well, actually, they're not doing so great anyways. You know what? Forget I said anything. But the bass and drums, I feel, were very important to try to keep loud enough to feel. And that is the big problem here. It's a stoner metal album that can't be felt. I can hear the music for however much I'm allowed to hear, but I can't feel it. And I know I sound like a 70s hippie stoned out of the fucking confines of this painted RV bus, but seriously, I may not be an expert on stoner metal, but I know at the very least that usually when you're in the mindset to feel the music, you usually want to feel it. Now, I'm sure your response is, well, Tom, you're not stoned, so of course you're not going to feel it. I've been stoned for 6 days straight. Well, first of all, you might not want to admit that on a podcast. You don't know who will be listening. And second of all, even the most sober, twig-shaped bastard on the planet can feel the best stoner metal albums of all time as if they were stoned. So being sober is not really an excuse. And even if it was an excuse, the issue still presents itself that the music just exists. And that's it. Again, the mix betrays the music here. Listening through Sanctified Heathen, it felt more like a fuzzed out background soundtrack with the recordings made from the police of a stoner in his living room. Which, by the way, that's your living room. You might want to double check under the table. But if you like this album, then that's great. I don't blame you. Again, compositionally, it's fine. But with a 9 out of 15, you could do so much better in the genre. Oh, you like that? It's the sound of my cheese alarm. Haven't had the chance to use it before now, but Carmiria's Advene has made that so. Though I'm not gonna lie, I thought the first use of it would have been with a power metal album, not a symphonic goth album. And yet it's setting it off. I think that may be because it's not the kind of gothic metal you'd expect. You heard it just now, it doesn't exactly scream Lacuna Coil or Paradise Lost. Advene has turned up the theatrics big time, and I'm not entirely sure how to feel about it. I mean, I'm not against it, but I'm actually kind of enjoying this. The guitar riffs are interesting and not too intrusive, the drums are pretty basic, but I do enjoy the fills. The vocals are strong, giving me strong power metal vibes, which may have actually implemented the cheese, and the bass, while not doing too much outside the norm, has a nice clang to it, and I'm honestly happy that it can be heard. The synths and the orchestra are really the stars here though. That's where the majority of the cheese is actually coming from, but they're well composed and add quite a bit to the overall sound. It's just some good glittery goth metal. I don't think I have too many issues with this album. I mean, at over 60 minutes, it's a bit long and you do start to feel the clock ticking onward with every beat, but if you're into this style of gothic metal, then I don't think you'll have too many problems. But that's the thing. This style of gothic metal can be an acquired taste for some. I know I was a bit put off by the sound, and I guarantee I'm not the only one. Like, if this cheesy, gothic, glittery, symphonic metal style that's all sunshine and rainbows in the middle of a storm cloud is something that you usually avoid like your in-laws, then you're looking at the wrong album. But with a 12.5 out of 15, you may sprinkle that Parmesan all over my dinner. Keyword, sprinkle. You have the full container, but do not dump it. And that's it for reviews. Like I said earlier, send your emails to tmckay@themetalrobot.com, that's tmckay@themetalrobot.com, or reach out on my socials for any albums you would like covered on the podcast or on the main YouTube show. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back with JJ Tartaglia on the Metal Robot Podcast. With the sound design tricks used on the album, how did I not see Demon Trolls coming? A proper metal musician would have said, let's adapt Inferno, and then wrote 20 Metallica riffs, chugged 20 cans of Blue Ribbon, and passed out in his own vomit. I'm just gonna call it C-3PO and R2's Evening Getaway. Tom Ellis! Wait. An effective way to have human interaction if you're an introvert.
Hey, thanks for coming. How was the traffic?
Signature Connoisseurs Inferno Review Part 2, only on
Metal Robot Reviews.
Metal addicts call it symbiosis between extreme metal and classical music. Cult Metal Flick says cinematic landscapes collide with atmosphere. Tom McKay says it's the reason my veins are filled with caffeine. Wait, what?
I can't help it. I'd rather write awesome metal than sleep. Give me a fucking Ambien, please!
Call to the Demon Sultan is out now on all streaming platforms.
And while you're at it, pick up some cool merch by going to metalrobotreviews.creatorspring.com or check the links in the podcast description.
Stream now. You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
Welcome back into the show. Hope that little taste of 80s goodness got your metal blood pumping. Would you believe me if I told you that this wasn't made in the 80s or by an 80s band? I know, it sounds like I'm on drugs, but I'm not, I promise. No matter how much my ADHD wants it. That was the sound of my first guest tonight on the podcast, JJ Tartaglia. He's mostly known for being the drummer of 80s-sounding heavy metal band Skullfist and symphonic metal band Operus, the owner of Boonsdale Records out of Toronto, and recently, he's dived further down the 80s rabbit hole with his new project, Thunderor. Thunderor's debut album, Fire It Up, released last month on all streaming platforms, and even had a review right here on the podcast. And I sat down with him last week to talk about Thunderor, Skullfist, Operus, and his love of 80s metal, which, depending on the year you were born, could be a good thing or a bad thing. But anyways, here's the full interview. All right, JJ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Of course, I'm happy to. I mean, when I heard the Thunderor album, Thunderor's album, Fire It Up, I was like, I would love to talk to this guy just to pick his brain about this album. So thank you so much for coming on the show. But before we get started into Fire It Up, which came out February 25th, please give us just a brief history of this project, because this is not the first band that you've done.
No, so Thunderor is basically a new band that we formed over the pandemic. It really just started when all the shit hit the fan, and it's I've done lots of bands. I'm primarily a drummer. This is actually the first project that I'm fronting on my own, and that I'm actually writing like most of the material. So that's a first.
Yeah, I mean, for a first time doing the vocals, I gotta say you're doing pretty good. Like, how long did it take for you to really hone your skills as a vocalist?
Yeah, well, I guess it's been about 2 years now of like hard work. I mean, I think over the years, this goes back many years actually, because if we take it back to the roots of what started all of this, is that it was really meant to develop my vocals. Because as you might know, I also play in Skullfist, and for years, Zach was harping on me about learning to sing so I could do the backups, and I was always like, yeah, I'll do it one day. And I would start learning, but then I would get discouraged. It was really hard for me, and I would just put it off. So it really came down to me just making that decision and being like, okay, enough's enough. It's been years. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put in the time and put in the work. So it's been about 2 years of a couple hours every day, and 5-6 days a week. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm still at the beginning of my journey,
Right, yeah. I mean, to be fair, like vocals, in terms of learning how to sing, how to do anything regarding your voice, it takes years of practice regardless. And, given the fact that you start in the pandemic, you clearly got the time on your hands, right? So it definitely seemed like the best time. But what was your singing voice like before that? Did you have any interest in singing before that? Or was this just something that you were kind of pushed into?
No, I think I always wanted to, but I really struggled with my voice. It was very deep, and I had trouble hitting the higher registers that I needed to do for this type of music.
Right.
And it was really just a gradual thing of me realizing the kind of technique that I had to do to be able to achieve that. So yeah, it's been a thing, and it was. I think I also had to change my attitude about singing. For some reason, I thought that like, oh yeah, I'm just going to learn how to sing and it's going to come easy. And I think we all know that nothing in life comes easy.
Nope.
So when I started to apply the same discipline that I have towards drumming, towards singing, then that's when I really started to see like some results.
And that's pretty good to hear, because again, like, you're, for a first time doing singing and fronting, you're actually doing pretty good for that in terms of this project. But
thank you.
You're very welcome. So your other band, Skullfist, one would argue that it's very 80s inspired, which I believe I think everybody would agree with in terms of the songwriting and as well as the production, which we'll get into production in a bit. But listening through Skullfist's back catalog, it's clear that there's also a sense of the modern metal playing that's playing a role in the inspiration for the songwriting. Meanwhile, with Thunderor, you seem to have gone full-blown 80s hair, Motley Crue cocaine, backstage Georgie levels of 80s metal. So also the fact that, on top of the fact that as we discussed, you're now performing vocals for this project, what was the inspiration for wanting to dive further into the 80s world in the 2020s?
Well, I think the thing with Skullfist is it's really Zach's baby. It always has been his band, and as a supporting band member, I'm there to push his musical vision. So the only writing I've ever done has been like drum parts or like drum ideas in terms of that, and that's kind of how it's been through my whole drumming career. So I think the difference with this project is that I was writing lyrics for the first time, and I was writing melodies and like full song arrangements. I even composed some songs on the piano and on the synth, it was all completely new to me. And I have to admit, when it started, I really didn't have an idea what the final product was going to look like. So me and Johnny were just writing these songs together, and after a while, the music kind of just starts to take form on its own, and it kind of like goes its own direction, and you're just there kind of watching it unfold. So I think Thunderor has been great because I've been able to put my personality into the music, and I guess that shines through. I mean, not that I'm like a cocaine head and banging chicks all the time, but I think it definitely shows what I think about. It shows how I view life in a very wild and fun way. Like follow your dreams, don't give up, those kinds of things. I think those are all like big themes in the Thunderor album. So, and obviously me and Johnny are both super influenced by 80s music. We just love 80s rock and metal. So there's no hiding it. It's definitely shining through.
And wow, I was assuming something completely different. I'll be completely honest, because I was assuming it was because, given the timeline, starting in 2020, I figured it's because 2020 makes one look back to a time when the biggest problem really was bad hair, nuclear catastrophe, and the Soviet Union. Wait, that's 2022. Never mind. But this is not going very far. Anyway, but with the 80s songwriting also comes 80s style production and mixing. Was having that trait to the music very important for this project to avoid the metal approach, the modern metal approach of VSTs, sampled drums, and autotune?
Absolutely. I think that was definitely the direction we wanted to go. We wanted a natural sound. We didn't want to quantize the drums. We didn't want to pitch correct. We wanted to be like, okay, yeah, maybe there's some, everything's not perfect. Basically. Yeah, but we want like the feeling to come across. So it was a combination of that, but also by default, because we did all of the tracking ourselves, and we are not accomplished engineers whatsoever. This was also a learning process in that manner, because we were buying equipment for the first time. We were switching to like a full digital setup for the first time. We used to use these old 8-tracks when we would track demos, me and Johnny. So we're very old school that way. It was really, but we had a lot of time on our hands because of the pandemic. So we were like, okay, well, let's do it this way. And so I think by default,
I also guarantee that many studios aren't going to be open during a pandemic either.
Yeah. A lot of them were closed in the beginning, because everyone was freaking out. But it was by default, because we don't know how to do the studio tricks. So it was like, okay, well, this is the track, and it's like, I don't know how to edit that, so we're just gonna have to do it again.
Oh, see, that is the 80s mentality right there for recording. You can't, so how do we edit this? Oh, you got to snip the entire freaking tape. Okay, let's track again.
Yeah.
And hope for the best. Pray to God we don't screw up the tape either, because that's more money down the drain. Oh my God. So, but all of this was it's digital, obviously, but live drums, live amped guitars. How many VSTs did you end up using on Fire It Up?
Dude, I don't even really know what a VST is, to tell you the truth. I feel like I know what it is, but I can't think of what it actually is at this moment.
I trying to think of what the acronym actually is, but it's basically plugins. So like stocky.
Oh yeah, for like guitars and stuff. No, yeah, we didn't do any of that. We're like, it's a Marshall cab and a Marshall amp with a freaking 57 on it, and that's it. We tracked everything in our rehearsal space. So it's I mean, it is what it is. I learned how to comp drums for the first time, which is something I always wanted to do, which was really cool because then I could really go into each take and be like, oh no, I like that fill better. I'm going to put that one in there. So I think in the past I've always had engineers comping my drums, which is cool. Like they know what they're doing, but so it's different when you're doing it yourself. You can be you can spend a little bit more time and I think get more of what you want.
And with the pandemic kind of winding down, not entirely, but kind of winding down to the point where we're actually able to go into studios again, do you think you'll do the at-home recording thing again?
I think I want to go into a nice studio. I mean, in the spirit of doing it the proper 80s way, I think I want to go into a nice studio and just go over the top with it and be like, yeah, I want like a giant room for the drums and like, I want to go all out. Yeah. I mean, because it's all fun and everything doing it the way that we did. And it was cool for the first record, but you just can't get those really amazing sounds that way. I mean, especially for drums, you need that good room with like, I want to run through one of those gigantic boards, like the big SSL consoles, right? That cost like $500,000. I want to run through that.
Right. Okay. And because obviously the at-home recording stuff is still pretty new to you, given the fact that you only really started back in 2020. For the mixing, because again, this has a very 80s sound to it. Who did you get to mix the album?
Yeah. So for the mixing, we did get a professional to do the mixing and the mastering also. So the mixing was done by a dude named Chris Snow. And he works, the studio's closed now, unfortunately, but it was the same studio where we were doing the new Skullfist record, which was also happening during this same time. So everything was kind of tying in, like we were already tracking at Vespa Studios, the studio. And so it was very easy for us to get him to mix it. And then Harry Hess from Harem Scarum did the mastering, which is really cool.
Okay. And you said you worked with them before for Skullfist, yeah?
Yeah. We've done 3 Skullfist records there now at this particular studio.
Well, have you also worked with them for your other project, Obscura? Or
Pardon
was
me?
that a complete... Have you worked with them for Obscura as well, or did that require a completely different approach?
You mean for Thunderor?
Oh, sorry. I'm saying your other band names completely incorrectly because I'm an idiot. Opurus, I meant to say.
Oh, Operus. Yeah.
It's a completely different name.
That's okay. Yeah. No. That's we did that one in Montreal with a different dude who's kind of like more versed in like power metal thingies because that one's got like the way more like generic. Like power metal sound. I don't love it. It's okay.
Well, generic if you consider a full-time cellist part of the lineup as generic power metal, but sure, fine. I see how it is. Don't worry. There are totally no power metal listeners listening to this. Okay, so, but going back to Thunderor's debut album, Fire It Up. It has plenty of, as we discussed, it has plenty of familiarity with Skullfist, but also kind of has a bit of a heavier tinge to it. Like, for example, Skullfist is Motley Crue and Iron Maiden, not exactly, just roll with me, bit of improv, then Thunderor is Judas Priest and Guns N' Roses. So how much of a different approach to songwriting was it for this album compared to your work with Skullfist?
Yeah, I think you're right. We kind of go wider on spectrum on both sides. So there are some tunes that are faster than Skullfist stuff, and there are tunes that are slower and like more mellow. So we kind of widened it up. I think because it was a new project and we didn't have really any particular thing in mind. it really opened up the imagination to do whatever we wanted. And that was the beauty about this project also, is that we weren't kind of like restrained by the ideas of a songwriter already. You know, me and Johnny were just kind of going into it. It's like I had drum parts, you know, I had drum songs. So I was like, okay, this is like the beat for the verse. This is the beat for the chorus. And then like I was kind of like imagining some riffs in my head, but then what Johnny played to it was not at all what I was imagining. So then we just went from there, and it just created itself. But I like the comparison you made with the Priest and Guns N' Roses. I've never thought of Guns N' Roses, but I guess we are. Yeah, we're pretty influenced by that too. Yeah,
it's good to hear, because again, with the two bands, they have obviously similar origins and similar influences, but again, like they sound similar but very different at the same time. And I think that's something that I think new listeners might actually really enjoy, as well as fans of Skullfist, who maybe are also looking for, you know, a bit of a fresh take on the 80s style, which if I remember correctly from the promo I got for Fire It Up, that was something that you were striving for, or was it something that just ended up coming up?
No, it's good. You're absolutely right. And I'm really glad that the album turned out the way it did, because in the beginning, I got to say, I was a bit worried that it would come out sounding too much like Skullfist. But then as we were writing the songs, and then I think the clear decision, I think, was when I decided that we would add synth on the whole record. And I think that added another element to it, which was like, okay, this is starting to become very different from Skullfist. But obviously, there is still a lot of similarities. So it's great, because we've been getting a really good response from our Skullfist fans, who are super supportive about the project. So most of them can appreciate and understand what we're doing, but it also opens up for new fans to come in and discover something. So yeah, I think it's a good balance that we got.
And here's a question I mostly have, because, again, like listening to Thunderor, I think one of the main things I said in my review of it on the podcast a couple of episodes back was that this is obviously an 80s metal sound in the modern day, which I thought was pretty interesting. And with that in mind, you know, what was there ever a time when you wanted to try implementing modern day aesthetics into your sound, or was that completely out of the question?
Yeah, I think the modern touch definitely comes from the mixing. Because like as much as we want,
I meant more with like songwriting, because obviously nowadays, you know, everybody loves their gents and their wheedly-dees. Obviously, you don't want to implement gent into your sound, I'm assuming, but like when it comes to like the modern metal songwriting, aside from just mixing and mastering, or even special VST bullshit. Was that something that ever came up that you wanted to maybe implement into your music at some point, whether it is with Thunderor or Operus and Skullfist?
I think songwriting wise, I don't think I ever thought of that. I think it was just freedom to do what I wanted to do, you know, songwriting wise, which was great. There are some like prog rock elements thrown in there. I'm a big prog rock fan, like 70s prog. I love, and I'm a big fan of synths and just keyboards in general. So I think, you know, you can hear those elements in the record, but yeah, I don't think I ever thought like, oh, we need to do this because this is like the trend or anything. Like I, to be honest, I don't even know what the trends are right now. Like I'm pretty bad with keeping up with new music, you know, so...
Hey, what if we did Iron Maiden, but we made our vocalist sound like T-Pain? How does that sound, guys? Huh? I don't think that would go well.
I mean, but having said that, I would be curious to work with a producer who would be like, oh, no, here, we got to do like this. This is like really in right now. Like, I mean, I'd be down for that, you know? Like maybe he would have an idea that like, I don't know, like maybe it's like a certain like reverb on the vocal or something that's just makes it sound more like today. And I mean, I think that could be cool as long as it sounds good. you know.
Yeah, I think that actually would be an interesting thing to hear, though, is because obviously, again, like your music is very 80s inspired, and honestly, if you plopped it back in the 80s, no one would be able to tell the fucking difference. But I feel like if modern elements were implemented into your sound, not saying you have to, but if that was the case, I feel like that actually would create something that is totally more unique than what we already have with Thunderer. And I would be very interested personally to see what that would come up with. I can't speak for the fans of Skullfist and Thunderer, but who knows? Who knows, really?
No, it could be cool. Like with the touch of like, I don't know, some of these new bands like Black Veil Brides or stuff like that, where but production wise, they're like, it's insane. There's like all kinds of stuff going on in there, you know? So, I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe a hint of that could be cool, but I don't know.
Who knows? Well, if you can find a way to work it into the music and still, keep its identity, keep its, quality, because I know the big critique of modern music nowadays is that the humanity is mostly taken out of it, and I can't disagree with that. Even with that, I would still love to see what you guys would end up doing with modern metal elements into this unique sound. But so going back to Fired Up, you said, talking about the album in that promo, that lyrically the album is meant to inspire a life journey, quote, an adventure with friends, motorcycles, romance, danger, and victory. So can you expand upon that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think of it as, because this band has been kind of symbolic to the attitude that I have towards life. I think another a big motivator for me when I decided to, take on singing and become a frontman and do this whole thing, was that I was reading this book by Tim Ferriss. It's called The 4-Hour Work Week. It's kind of a cool book, but there's a part where he talks about the importance of having like an impossible goal in your life. Like you should always be striving to do something impossible. And that really hit home for me. And I think for a long time, I did have an impossible goal in my life, to like aspiring to be a heavy metal drummer, like growing up in the countryside and stuff like that. But I think more or less I've kind of like realized that goal. And I think maybe I didn't realize that I needed another like impossible thing to take on. So that was another huge motivator for me, that I was going to make this, because for me at the time, I couldn't even really fathom that I would be able to pull it off, or, do it live, for example, or even do the recording. So it all seemed so far away and imaginary to me. So I think it's taking like that type of attitude towards life, and basically just following your dreams, living wild, having adventures. I'm a big fan of adventures, and romance as well. I've had many romantic adventures that tie in with music, and I don't know. It's kind of been the way that I've liked to live my life, and if I can somehow like communicate that through the music, and then inspire someone to be like, oh, I want to do something like this, if I can inspire someone to be like, whatever it may be, like maybe someone's been thinking about doing something for years, but they don't want to do it because of so and so reasons or whatever. Sometimes you just got to dive right in, and then you don't know where that will take you, right? So. Yeah, I'm hoping that people can communicate with that message.
I hope so too, because that is something that, I mean, even though we are in a pandemic, and obviously the world is kind of going to shit right now, if anybody's been following the news, but I do feel like, being able to go on an adventure of some kind in your own life, I think is very important nowadays. And who knows? Maybe people will go on their own adventures. Maybe they'll tag you on Instagram about their adventures saying, fire it up! Who knows? Who knows? But obviously with Thunderer and with Skullfist and getting the name again, Operus, so I don't mess it up again. With all these projects that you're part of, what is the future of these projects?
Well, with Skullfist, we have a new record that is coming out next month. So that's very exciting. We have a European tour in May, and then some festivals in the summer. Mm-hmm. So that's looking really good. Should be pretty busy. And then with Thunderor, we have a European tour in June to push the record, and we have some stuff that's not announced yet. But we have some festivals coming up also. We have 2 shows in Mexico with Udo in June also, which is going to be amazing. I can't wait to do those. Those are going to be killer. And Operus is kind of quiet right now. We're actually going through some member changes. The cello player is no longer in the band. Actually, kind of. It's the band is in a restructuring phase right now. Whoa! As they've lost a few members. Yeah. So
was this previously annanned, or are you? Is this
coming out the first time? Is top secret, bro. So yeah, this is
sealed
just for your show.
Woo! Metal Robot exclusive, people. Tune in. Okay, wow, that's insane. Okay, so so obviously, even though there is a lineup change, is there anything in the works, or is it you're just dealing with this first, putting out this fire, and then coming back to it later?
Yeah, I think my priorities has shifted towards the more that I've been doing Thunderor, the more I've been immersed in it, and I can't help but feel more attachment to it because it just feels more personal. I mean, I guess it's because I'm doing, more of the writing. So that's a new feeling for me. I've always been like a supporting band member as a drummer. So that's a new feeling for me, and I'm really liking it. I think my focus is going to shift more towards just Thunderor and Skullfist. And then maybe some one-off projects, or I'm always working on projects because they're kind of like rotating projects. Do album cycles and then like try something else. But I think the end game is I definitely want to keep pushing Thunderor and do another record, see how that goes. But I definitely of course keep doing Skullfist. It's been a very long time with that band now, and I love it. So I don't want that to stop. In a perfect world, I would like to be able to juggle all of the projects that I want to do, and kind of have the control over the scheduling so that not too many things clash. I really look up to drummers who can do that. Like guys like Gene Hoglan, or any big players who are doing like multiple like giant bands. I love seeing that. It's just that it just goes to show that there's no limits on what you can do. If you really want to do different things, then you can.
That's good. Ed, I really, really want to know this then, because you've got so many projects. Do you also happen to have a day job on top of all that, or are you sane enough to be able to not burden yourself with too much work?
Well, I'm pretty fortunate. My day job is really just me running my own record label. So
congratulations.
It's just thank you. Yeah, it's a small label, but I've been doing it for a long time now, and it ties in with music and stuff, obviously. So I can do I'll throw in, I do some booking, I promote shows, I do some management. So it all goes in together. It's just really supporting the dream of becoming a top musician, right? So
that's fantastic to hear, because I was kind of worried for a second there. We're doing 3 bands, so we're touring Europe, going to shows in Mexico. Oh, by the way, I'm also working as a janitor. What?
Yeah.
The fuck? How? That would have been very interesting, though, to find out. But so with that in mind, I have one last question for you, and it's a very important question, I would say, in regards to everything that we've talked about here. Metal Robot fans know exactly what I'm talking about here. This question is pretty simple, yet very, very important. If you could be any cereal box character, who would you be?
Oh, cereal box character. I'm trying to think.
Everybody wants to know here, JJ. Come on, what's your answer?
Yeah. I really liked the Corn Pops when I was a kid. I think that was probably my favorite cereal. But I don't think that they had like a mascot.
Yeah, I'm trying to
right?
think about that too. I don't think they had a mascot. No, someone will probably correct me, but I don't remember a mascot with Corn Pops.
Dude, you know what I saw in the grocery store the other day? It was hilarious. I sent this to Johnny because he just spent the summer in Mexico, and they had, so you know how there's Cinnamon Toast Crunch? Do you guys have that over there?
In Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you in Canada too?
Yeah.
Oh.
Fair
Okay.
enough. No, we have it here, of course.
Yeah. So I saw a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but it was cinnamon toast churros. And I was like,
no way.
Yeah. I was so tempted to buy it. And I didn't, but I sent Johnny a photo. I was like, oh man, this is hilarious. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the character, I don't know. I guess I would be a Corn Pop because they don't have a mascot. So
that's a different answer. Okay, I like it. I like it very much. So JJ, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If there's anything you want to shout out that you're up to right now, anything you want to tell the Metal Robot listeners, let it be known. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, we just did our album release show actually here in Toronto over the weekend, and that was we also live streamed it. So we had multicam and full mixed audio. So I know a lot of people. It wasn't a free stream, so a lot of people didn't tune in. So just for everybody that did miss it, we are gonna mix the audio and then release the footage in a couple weeks. So I think that should be really cool. So yeah, if anyone was hoping to catch the show or the stream and missed it, we're gonna post that. And yeah, for since we're talking about Canada, we have a very cool Canadian festival announcement coming up in the next couple of weeks as well.
That was JJ Tartaglia of Thunderor, Fist and Operus. Thunderor's Fire It Up is available now on all streaming platforms if you like your 80s music unapologetic and also somehow Canadian at the same time. I don't know how you can be Canadian and also be unapologetic. Haha, the puns are always inherent. Then check it out along with Skullfist through the link in the podcast description. All right, don't go anywhere. News of the week coming right up on the Metal Robot Podcast. This week's Metal News Recap is brought to you by My Sanity. Everything is so depressing! Why? To stay up to date with the latest in the metal scene, check out themetalrobot.com for videos, reviews, press, and so much more. Now,
Back into the podcast. Presented by themetalrobot.com. This is MRP News.
you know what I'm surprised by this week? There's not a lot of metal news in Ukraine from this week. It seems that the past few weeks we've heard nothing but Ukrainian-related news in terms of metal because of the war that's going on. I mean, this week Nergal did announce that Behemoth shows in Russia and Ukraine are cancelled, publicly showing support for Ukraine and condemning the attacks in Russia, but that's basically it. Next week, I wouldn't be surprised if there were no stories whatsoever coming out of the metal scene. Now, that's not to say that the attacks are done or that the war is over. It is still going on. And obviously, you know my position on the war. You know that I think that Putin's a fucking idiot and a fucking maniac, and we need to show support for Ukraine and make sure that we help out in any way that we can. And if you do want to show support to Ukraine, you want to help them out, you can check the link that is in the podcast description, where I have provided, like the past few episodes, the link to the places where you can support Ukraine. But with that out of the way, let's get into this week's metal news. First up, Dolly Parton and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, if you weren't aware, a few days ago, the country star made a public announcement regarding her nomination as one of the 2022 inductees, stating that she wishes to bow out of the nomination. Posting her statement on her Instagram, quote, "I don't feel that I have earned that right. I really do not want votes to be split because of me, so I must respectfully bow out." A statement that's seen virtually universal praise, including Reich Faulkner, who's also an inductee, who called the move a, quote, classy move. Now, Miss Parton is not the only person to have ever rejected a nomination from the Hall of Fame over the years, though I think she may be one of the few who did it as nicely as she did. The Sex Pistols immediately come to mind. So, one would hope that with this, the good fellas at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame would appreciate her wishes and respect her desire to not participate in the vote, and decide to take her name out of the ballot and not keep her in. I couldn't even say that with a straight face. What do you think the Hall of Fame are? A charity for puppies and battle jackets? Of course they're going to keep her name in the ballot, because the Hall of Fame is nothing if not respectful of artists' wishes. Side note, if that's not the most accurate statement of the music industry in general, I don't know what is. So yeah, the Hall of Fame is still going to keep her name in the ballot, saying in a statement on their socials, quote, "In addition to her incredible talent as an artist, her humility is another reason Dolly is a beloved icon by millions of fans around the world." I mean, are you surprised? This is the same people who, even while they were telling the Hall of Fame to eat shit and die, the Sex Pistols were still inducted. I shit thee not. Inducted in 2006 alongside Black Sabbath, who, fun tidbit, also wanted out of this shit. Are you surprised yet? Now, on one hand, the artists never really had a say in getting nominated to begin with, which is pretty dumb considering even the Oscars don't do that. When you have less integrity than the fucking Oscars, you're kind of a piece of shit, just saying. But fine, they pick random artists based on a certain criteria and then put them in the running. The bands don't submit, they don't have to submit if they don't want to. They just get their name in the ballots if they fill the criteria decided by the museum. Fine. That's how it works. It's dumb, but that's how it is. However, if the artists want out of the nominations and they don't want to be inducted into your fucking museum, you bet your ass they should have a fucking say. Nominations are still getting voted on, so if you want to vote for whatever reason, you can, but what I want to know from you is, what are your thoughts on this? I've said my piece on the subject, but I'm curious to know what you think. Do you think Dolly should be able to pull out of the nomination, or no, do the fans have more of a say here? Send me a tweet at @themetalrobot, let me know.
You guys want to buy some drugs?
Guess what? Tool's back with another music video, the first to be added to their collection of videos in 15 years. The song that gets this treatment is their song Opiate, although this is a 30th anniversary version, so they're calling it Opiate Squared. Original name, I know. The music video is actually a 10-minute short film, but you can find the 3-minute clip they posted on YouTube. Fair warning though, it's a Tool music video so Tool that your brain might have an aneurysm just watching it. I had a look and I was too stoned to watch it further while I was sober. Oh yes, it's one of those videos. You can find the video linked in the podcast description. This also comes with the news that you won't have to wait too long for some new material from the band. Well, at least we won't be waiting 13 years like last time, because Danny Carey said, speaking with Cleveland Scene, that the band has some leftover material from Fear Inoculum, the band's 2019 album, and they already have a head start on 3 or 4 songs. Well, let's hope it doesn't take 13 years this time. If it takes 20 years, that's just the band being really cheeky, and we'll just set them on fire. But speaking of videos, Kanye West is in hot water right now for his video. Don't click away. I can feel you slowly searching for the latest Joe Rogan podcast. Get your ass back here and pay attention. I promise this has a purpose here. Now, the reason we're talking about the overly clingy rapper's video, Hurricane, is because of a guy named Dennis Forkas. If that name rings a bell, then you probably also know that he's a cover artist that's worked with some of the best dark metal bands. Specific works to pull from include Behemoth's The Satanist and Thrice Woven by Wolves in the Throne Room. I think I must say he's a really talented dude. Well, it turns out Kanye West's team thought so too, because there's one specific scene in that Hurricane video that looks oddly familiar, almost like another piece of Dennis's called Hortus Aureus, which features a platform with an arch. Kinda looks Egyptian-made, maybe Greek. Some trees on top of the platform as well, a fire pot in the center, and beneath, a large, scaly dragon holding it up. Wait, didn't that scene in the Hurricane video also feature a platform with some trees on top, a fire pot in the center, and a large scaly dragon holding it up from underneath? I mean, there's no arch, but there is Greek pillars on top of the platform, which is still fairly close. So, For obvious reasons, Dennis is not happy. Though you know what? I wouldn't be happy either if Kanye West team tried to replicate my work and still ended up sucking at it. But when Dennis called them out, he actually chose not to point the finger at Kanye himself, but at his team, and going on to say, quote, "One would expect at least some measure of ethics, quality control, and respect from a popular artist of his renown." You know, Dennis has a point. Usually when someone is unhinged and has an unhealthy obsession with a comedian nailing their wife, they tend to think only clear and sane thoughts. Now, no charges have been placed at the time of recording this podcast, but if he does place charges, I feel confident that Dennis Forkas would be living on that platform that he painted. It's a dream house, perhaps. Who cares? He'd be able to afford it. And finally, let's give an update on the Marilyn Manson story that's somehow still ongoing. I still don't know exactly how that's possible. But before I start, let me play you this clip.
I am not scared. I am sad because this is how it works. This is what pretty much every survivor that it tries to expose someone in a position of power goes through.
I am not scared. That's the voice of Evan Rachel Wood speaking on The View about Marilyn Manson, whose real name is Brian Warner, and also his defamation lawsuit against her. Now, we covered a bit of this story last episode, which you can check that out afterwards, but basically, Warner filed a lawsuit claiming a bunch of insane shit, including that she forged an FBI letter when she was outing him as the monster that we kind of just assumed that he was already, but we just wanted to pretend that it was an act, apparently. But as you heard, she's not backing down and spoke on The View earlier this week about it, but also brought attention to the timing of the lawsuit.
I'm very confident that I have the truth on my side and that the truth will come out, and, you know, that this is, you know, clearly timed before the documentary, and you know, for this is the reason.
Now, it's a bit tough to say whether she's explicitly claiming that the lawsuit was filed because Warner got scared of the documentary Phoenix Rising that came out on HBO on the 15th of March, but come on, the timing is a little suspicious. The only way it could be more suspicious is if the lawsuit said in big red letters, "I swear I didn't sue because of your fake documentary." Now, because the case is still ongoing, she obviously can't talk too much about the case. But she did want to end her answer in that same interview with this statement.
I'm not doing this to clear my name. I'm doing this to protect people. I'm doing this to sound the alarm that there is a dangerous person out there, and I don't want anybody getting near him, you know, and so people can think whatever they want about me. I have to let the legal process run its course, and, you know, I'm steady as a rock.
The documentary Phoenix Rising is out now on HBO Max. You can check it out for yourself if you have a subscription, but the story actually doesn't even end here. There was also news this week that Warner's ex-assistant Ashley Walters wasn't able to participate in the documentary because Warner allegedly threatened retaliation if she did, which is pretty fucked, and honestly, I'm not surprised. But also, while all this was happening, a petition was getting passed around to remove Marilyn Manson's heart-shaped glasses video from YouTube. If you don't know why, it's because that video is what features the sexual assault that Evan Rachel Wood was talking about. One of them, at least. The petition reads, quote, "According to Evan Rachel Wood, Marilyn Manson raped Evan by penetration during filming which was not planned, and while she was under the influence." And this is shown in the video. The petition needs 35,000 signatures, however, at the time of recording this, it's only just above 33,000. I'll provide the link in the sources document that can be found in the description if you want to provide a signature, which I think you should. Because if nothing else, even if for whatever reason you agree with Marilyn Manson, first off, why? But second, even if you do, YouTube is the kind of platform that's willing to demonetize goat whore music videos because it's goat whore. So I'm pretty sure that this same platform would be setting their entire servers on fire over videos featuring a fucking crime. If nothing else, sign it so that we don't have any hypocrisy. And that calls it for the Metal News Recap. Jeez, what a fucking story to end on. God, this segment is so depressing. Once again, all the links to everything I talked about in this segment can be found in my sources document, which can be found in the podcast description. You can also check out themetalrobot.com for more news and press that can be found throughout the week. All right, coming up, 15 plus artists making metal music. What is it and why is it such a great idea? You can find out after the break when we speak with the GJ, the founder of this project. This This is the Metal Robot Podcast. Looking to stay up to date on all things Metal Robot?
No, not really.
What? Why?
I don't listen to metal.
How are you listening to this podcast?
I thought it was Joe Rogan.
We're gonna pretend he didn't say that.
Follow the show wherever you tread on social media.
Facebook and Twitter.
At The Metal Robot.
Instagram.
At The Metal Robot. You can even join the Metal Robot Discord server.
We have fun there.
Links to all of that and more in the description of this podcast. Follow
now.
Ever wanted to take Metal Robot interviews on the go, but had this happen? Dead? I charged this last night! For fuck's sakes! Ah! While we can't solve a bad phone battery, you can take the interviews you love with you wherever on MRP Throwbacks. Be sure to hit save for when you want this on your evening drive to the venue.
If you could be any cereal box character,
What about that tiger dude?
I was gonna say the same thing, actually.
MRP Throwbacks, only on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Apple Podcasts.
You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
You gonna guess who that is? You gonna guess? It's me! It's me! That's the song The Rite of Lycaon Part 1 on the Metal Robot Podcast, featuring the vocals of the robot with laryngitis, apparently, and Marzio Grave, playing a wicked solo to end the bloody goodness. Now, to be clear, this is not actually my song. I did feature with the vocals, but this is the second single of the project Homoiousios, a project featuring 15-plus artists from multiple countries, cultures, and languages spanning across the globe, and a word that features too many O's for its own good. The man behind this ambitious project is Guilherme Adriano, also known as the GJ, and I sat down with him a few days ago to talk all about it and much more. So, here's my talk with Homoiousios founder, the GJ, Part 1. How are we doing today?
All right, man. I'm awesome. Thank you.
That is fantastic. Welcome to the show. So for those who aren't aware or have, for whatever reason, been skipping the commercials on the podcast, which, by the way, how dare you, tell everyone who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
All right. Well, I am the GJ, and I am also Homoiousios, and but that's not my real name, though. That would be a pretty weird name, but yeah. So what I do is what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to become a producer, right? So I have this name that I'm releasing all sorts of songs that I like to make under, which is the GJ. And under the GJ, I have, for now, just one other project, which is Homoiousios, but I intend to have lots and lots more. But the idea under the GJ is that it started as like a way of me finally being able to record and make all the sorts of songs and music that I always wanted to do, but never was able, was never able to, because I never, had the gear to record or anything. Mm-hmm. But then, yeah, basically the GJ is like my super multi-genre musical project that I wish to extend to infinity and beyond.
So far you're doing pretty good. From what the tagline was, like 15 plus artists you've already got. And yeah. That's pretty amazing. I know I'm one of them, which might, whatever, but but 15 plus artists in general, that's a lot of people involved with this project. How did you end up getting all these people together?
Yeah, it's funny because that was not the intention whatsoever. So I'm actually from Brazil, and back in Brazil, I had a new metal band. We had a couple of songs and we played lots of covers. And what I always wanted to do was I wanted to make like our own songs. I didn't want to play any covers. So I just wanted to make a bunch of songs and go to recording. But then, you get a difference of opinion with this guy, and then you don't really align with the musical taste of that guy. So we ended up splitting the band, and I never really got to record what I really wanted, right? Then my wife and I, we got to the US, and I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to record music. I'm going to make music. So I need people. And then I started looking for people. But then, getting the rooms to rehearse in, getting the people with the gear, getting to align everyone on the same musical taste and everything, it was a nightmare. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it, I'll do it myself. I just want to be like a one-man band, and I want to record everything, track everything, do vocals and stuff. So then I started doing that. But then I found something out. I can't do vocals. I can't fucking do vocals. I cannot sing. I tried screaming. I tried growling. I tried many things, but I hurt my voice so badly that I was like, fuck this. I cannot do vocals. I'm going to need a vocalist. So I had one song Lilium, which I had been working for a very long time on, just like step by step building it, making it nicely. And then I just reached out in a Facebook community. I was like, hey guys, metal vocalist, whatever on Facebook. Hey guys, who wants to do vocals on this track? And then this guy from Mexico reached out. I was like, all right, here's the track, do your vocals. He sent me the vocals and I mixed it and I was like, whoa, mind blowing, sounds awesome.
That is great to hear.
And that was when, oh, look, my dog is here now. So that was, I can't pick her up right now because this thing is so short and it's connected to my monitor. If I move, things come down.
That's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. And so I sent the track. He sent me the vocals. I mixed it all and it sounded so good. Even though the demo was really shitty because I did everything on my iPhone and on my iPad back then. But just the mix and the writing, the song and the vocals, everything was fun. Two, it sounded pretty good. And then thirdly, when I posted on my YouTube channel, it had a very good reception. Like people really liked it. And they were like, hey, dude, you should do more tracks like that. And I was like, all right, that is a great idea. So that's basically how Homoiousios came about, because it was finally a project where I could do all the songs I wanted and then reach out for people to come on to and do vocals. And it basically started with one guy, that guy from Mexico who did Lilium. And then I got Paula from Portugal to do the lyrical vocals on that track. And then there were two. And then I was like, you know what? What if I go with three? And then I reached out for someone else. That was you. Yay! And then you said that. I was like, oh, interesting. Now that's three. So I just kept on going. And then one by one, it's now more than 15 people from all different parts of the world, and it's been going nicely.
Yeah, it's good to hear, because I know like when you reached out, this was like I remember this specifically. I was on the Gear Gods live stream because I submitted the demo version actually of Faith in the Faceless before that became what it is now. And I remember you were in the chat, and the first thing I see from you is like, would you like to growl on my symphonic metal track? I'm like, well, sure. Okay, sure. That sounds great. I was like, whoa, this is a new, I didn't realize that putting my name out there would actually get some recognition of some kind. That's interesting. Who would have thought? But so far, yeah, it's because since then it's just ballooned into so many people. But I remember you actually, at some point, you did also mention that the project was almost scrapped. Can you tell me about that, or am I remembering something incorrectly?
No, that's right. Yeah, because I got super disappointed at first because I wasn't able to track everything. I mean, you're an artist. We are both perfectionists, obviously. So I wasn't really able to track everything to my liking because I was doing everything on my iPad. And if you know GarageBand, you know that it is not super dandy. DAW for mixing metal. So no. I was just trying to do everything for free, right? So I had already gotten the iPad, I had my guitar, and it was pretty expensive. I didn't want to buy anything else. So I was trying to do everything on my iPad, on my iPhone, with my cheap Ibanez and just like free plugins. And the result was not super stellar. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave this alone because if I try to do something to my liking, it's going to cost a lot of money. I'm just going to leave this project, just let it die, you know? And then my wife was like, nah, you should try really making it work. So I asked for her permission to buy stuff. And then she said yes. So I bought a Mac, I bought a guitar, and she just left all in the background. But it's true. I have to ask for her permission for buying stuff. And I just bought all the gear I needed and then started like really recording, learning, mixing and stuff. And so the project was kept alive. And by the way, the J on the GJ stands for her name. That's Jamili. G stands for G as in Guilherme, right? GJ. And because she helps me with a lot of stuff, melody wise, and just listening to my tracks and telling me if it sounds like shit or it doesn't. So she kind of oversees the whole process. And also it's a funny name in Portuguese because it says it's kind of how Brazilian people pronounce the word DJ. We just say GJ. So it's kind of like a double meaning. But yeah, so she really helped me stay focused, and the project didn't die.
That is fantastic, because otherwise, like, we wouldn't have gotten Lilium that came out back in February, I believe. And then this month, of course, we had the release of The Rite of Lycaon, which is me. So that, which is, honestly, and we've got more coming out as well, because again, there's like 15 plus artists. And it's actually really amazing what you're doing here. But I want to go into, because the lyrical themes seem to all kind of connect to each other, and that seems to come back towards the name of the project, Homoiousios, which, by the way, I know if anybody is looking in the podcast description, is spelt really fucking funny, but apparently it actually is pronounced Homoiousios. So you posted an explanation along with the pronunciation. Thank you, Jesus. And you mentioned like what the word Homoiousios was. Can you go into a bit more detail about that, like the history behind Homoiousios, the word?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I knew that I needed to distinguish these sounds that I was making from the DJ, because the DJ is like more playful, chiptune, synthwave, metal, video game stuff. It doesn't really have
Doom
like
soundtrack. Yeah, exactly.
Doom soundtrack inspired stuff. So with Homoiousios, I wanted like to have a more specific sound, right? And like some sort of evilness to it. So I knew I needed a better name than the GJ. And let me bore you a little bit about the history of the name now.
Sure.
When I was younger, because I'm super old right now. So when I was younger, I was like very much into Christian theology and religion in general. And I read so many theology, Christian theology books and all. And this term Homoiousios always stuck to me because it had a fascinating history. So Homoiousios is a Christian heresy, and it's only one letter of a difference from the dogma, which is Homoiousios. Something you just take out the I. I can't pronounce it either. But the I in the center of the word is the only difference. Is what actually got hundreds and hundreds of people persecuted, killed, and exiled. I was like, well, one letter gets people killed.
One letter, really?
Yeah, because so Homoiousios without the I means same nature, same substance, same stuff. And basically it was the Trinitarian doctrine. So the Father, the Spirit, and the Son were of one nature, one essence. They were homoousios, right? And then the heretics came along and said, no, it's homoiousios. They are of a similar nature. So homoi, the I means it's of a similar nature. It's of a similar substance. So the Trinity they're not all equal in equal footing. They are like one is more God than the other, one is less, and there's a hierarchy within the Trinity, right?
Yeah, so, I'm guessing that must have pissed off many of the
people got killed. People got very, very killed dead because of this. And I was like, wow, that's a great term, because it's a one letter difference between living and dying. That's a fascinating. So that the history of the word fascinated me, right? So that term stuck with me. And then much later on, when I lost my faith and all, the term sounded interesting because it encapsulated like hatred and bigotry and how much one can be brainwashed to the point of murdering someone because of a letter. I was like, that's a great term. I'm going to use that. So that's the history of the word itself. Now, the reason why I decided to use it was because from the beginning, I knew that this project was not going to be in one genre of music, because one, I cannot write so many songs in one genre. I'm not that skilled. So I wanted to explore different genres, like not only death metal, but black metal, symphonic metal, nu metal, gent, and core, and hardcore, and punk. And there are so many genres involved and so many songs on the list. So I knew I didn't want to be in one genre. I wanted to be of different genres. And I also knew I didn't want to be in one language, right? Because the guy from Mexico, like, him singing in Spanish was really evil sounding. It was awesome. And
yeah, that was definitely like it added a new texture to it that I didn't think was like that I didn't even think would have been possible. Because I'm like, this isn't Latin, and yet it feels evil. It sounds evil, especially with the kind of screams he's doing. Yeah. I'm like, that's a great texture.
And then when he rolls his R's and like ratas, and I was like, oh, it sounds evil. It really sounds evil. So it started in Spanish, but then I said, you know what? Just so that more people get into it, add some verses in English. So he added some verses in English. And then the woman from Portugal was like, you know what? Do it in Portuguese. Do all the choruses in Portuguese. So the song ended up, it starts in Spanish, it goes to Portuguese, goes back to Spanish, and then goes to English, and then goes to Portuguese, and then ends in English. I was like, that's great. It's a multi-genre. Let's make it multilingual now. So I'm going to look for people to do their lyrics and track their vocals in their own respective languages. You know, I don't care how many languages there are in one song. Let's make it multi-genre and multilingual, multicultural. that's the idea of Homoiousios. So we are all metalheads, right? We're all musicians, but we're not the same. Like we're made of a similar stuff, but we're not made of the same stuff.
Yeah, we come from different backgrounds, different musical backgrounds, different, obviously, cultural backgrounds, and we come from different places all across the globe. But at the end of the day, we're all metalheads. We're all human beings. One of us is a robot, but that's beside the point. I do think that is definitely a great use of the term. And even though I was telling you this, like that, I think is very, very inherent with what this project is trying to do. And I thought that was a great use of that term, but I kind of want to get into like who's a part of this project here. Now, obviously with the song William, we have UX and Palatelis. And then when we get to the Right of Lycaon, there's It's Me. And then there's Marzio Grave, I think is how you pronounce his name. But who else can you say is a part of this project? Or is that top secret?
Oh, no, not at all. Dude, I don't know all the names by heart, but so I see here on my chat, there's Yasmin. She's from France. There's Bruno. He's from Brazil. There's Marzio. He's also from Brazil, but he's now living in Hungary. And then there's Aysam and Zakaria, who are from Morocco. There's Beatrice from Italy. There's a guy, Yevgen, I think it's his name, is from Austria, if I'm not mistaken. There's another guy who's been dormant in the chats and I haven't really reached out to him yet, but he's from Myanmar. So there's like people from all over the place, right? And each of them are doing a song in their respective languages, right? And basically what I'm doing is I'm giving them a theme, and then they take the lyrics and melody and then they write whatever they want. It's same thing we did actually. I gave you a theme, you wrote awesome lyrics. By the way, let me just say, dude, you're a great writer. You are a great writer.
Thank you. And I remember correctly, I think Bruno did the low drones on the Red Lycaon too, right?
Yeah. And that was such an accident. I mean, so many of the ideas we're all having together just come by accident, because he had posted a video on a random Facebook group. And so it appears on my feed because I follow him, of him doing these low drones. And I was like, dude, that sounds awesome. How about we use them in a song other than yours? And he was like, yeah, I'm in. So he did those low drones for your song, and he's also doing low drones for the DJ. And yeah, it's awesome how these things come about because they're totally unplanned.
Yeah, because I remember when you sent me the demo for the Right of Lycaon, like without before I even had my vocals attached to it, there were no low drones in the end. I mean, there was still like the little ASMR fucking meat eating portion that was still there, but yeah, there were no low drones, and I thought that was like, once I could hear it, I was like, oh. This is some really nice ear candy, like towards the end here. And yeah, it definitely added quite a bit. And you said you're following him and you got the idea for that. Is he appearing on any more songs in the future?
Oh yeah, definitely. He's got like 2 songs in the making. But both of his songs are like way down the line because I met people in different stages of the project, right? So the people I met first are the people that have the first songs. And since they're like 21 tracks, if I just decided to release all of them at once as an album or an EP, I'd take forever to release it. I'd just be like a whole year. No, it wouldn't happen. I'd probably give up halfway there. So I was like, you know what? In today's internet streaming culture, people have to be engaged and get to know what the process is, how the processes are going and all. So instead of just, dumping a 21 track EP, I'm just going to release one song every couple of weeks. So this way people are engaged and it's easier to interact and grow the community. So his songs are like way down the line, like October near the end of the year, but he's got 2 songs in there. And so do you. You got another 2 tracks coming because we got the Right of Lycaon. Part 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, part 2. I know part 2, like to give a little behind the scenes eye candy for the ear candy for the Metal Robot listeners here. Right of Lycaon part 2 is already like the vocals have been recorded. I'm still waiting on approval from the GJ over here for if those are good to go or if there's any changes. But that should probably be coming down the line soon. And then part 3 is still in the writing phase, I believe, for the instruments. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still in the making.
How many songs are currently in the writing phase for this project? Because again, like you're doing like a single by single basis. So how many have been written thus far? How many are still being written?
Yeah, this is going to cause anxiety to a lot of people, but all of them.
Oh no!
Literally all of the songs are in the writing process. All of them, even the one that is due next month, it's still in the writing process. Because here's another thing I noticed that happens to me quite often, and I hate the fact that it happens. I make a song, it's beautiful, it's nice, I release it. A month later, I look back at it and I'm like, dude, I sucked at this. I could have done this better. This should not have been set in stone. So I keep revisiting the ideas. So I was like, you know what? Let me just leave all my sessions open, work on them all at the same time. Because if I have a great idea for this song, maybe I can use that great idea on this one and then that one on this one and so forth, so on. So I keep them all open. They're all started. They all have the structure. Imagine a bunch of skeletons, right? A couple of them have more meat, have more muscle and meat. Some of them have the nerves already. Some of them have half of the skin on. But basically, I'm just creating them all together as I go. So none of them are really finalized.
I'm really hoping your organization skills are like top notch if you're doing it all at once.
Oh, bro, no, they're not.
No. Oh, I feel that.
Yeah, but it's fun. It's fun.
How many songs are currently in the writing process right now? Like in terms of instrumentation, how many songs are currently in the process of being made?
Yeah, all of them. Yeah. So, for example, I just got off a chat with Caleb. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's doing one of the songs. So what I did is before finishing his song, I finished 10 seconds and I mixed it basically already. So he's got like 10 to 20 seconds of a song. I sent it to him. I said, lay down vocals, do whatever you think should be done on those 10 seconds and then send it back to me. He did it. Now he sent it back to me. Now I'm putting it all together. And now from what I'm going to hear it, I'm going to keep on writing the song.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to get like feedback and like feel the energy of the vocals and get ideas from what they're doing with their voice to keep on writing the song.
Right. But do you have a count on how many songs are currently in the process?
Oh,
like,
yeah. 17.
17?
Yeah.
All at once.
All at once. Yes. I do a little bit.
Shit.
I do a little bit here today. I do a little bit on that one 2 days from now. And then I work like 4 to 5 hours on the one that is next to be released. And then I go back and forth. This way, I don't know. It keeps me engaged, man. It works for me.
Hey, you know, whatever keeps you engaged, whatever keeps you active. I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking like, because I know what it's like doing like the musical solo project and running the Metal Robot Reviews YouTube channel and now the podcast. Like time management must be a bitch on your end, huh?
Oh, bro, it is a bitch right now.
Well, add in the fact that also, like, I'm guessing you're not doing this full time, so you must have like a job on the side as well that that pays the bills. Jesus, fuck.
Yeah, this is just a passion hobby, but yeah, it takes a lot out of me. But I'm okay. I'm okay with it. And right now, my wife and I, we are in the process of moving out of this apartment into our house, but our house is still being built. And it keeps being pushed back and delayed because, you know, shortage supplies and all of that.
Right.
So we both kind of gave up trying to have a schedule around the lifestyle we're having right now because I'm working from home. She's working from the office. We're both waiting for the house to be done. And then there's this and there's that. So we're like, you know what? Until we move out to the house, we're not really going to have a fixed schedule. We're just going to do whatever and just... We're in kind of a limbo right now. So I'm also like, my schedule is in a limbo. I don't try to like have a schedule of I should work on music from this hour to this hour on this day to this day. I just work on music whenever I feel like, whenever I have the energy and I have the time.
Part 1 of my sit down with the GJ. Stay tuned for part 2 in the coming weeks to talk more about Homoiousios, but also dive into Guilherme's faith and why he ended up leaving theology behind. It's actually a really interesting story, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks. All right, let's check to see what's coming up next week on the Metal Robot Podcast.
You just listened to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
Alright, the Reign of Fire has begun, which means it's time to give you the tease for next week. I would go all in, balls deep, but the suspense is half the fun. Coming up next week, I sit down with Tom TDW DeWitt to talk about all things TDW and Proggy Boy stuff. I also bring on our good friend Colin Sterling of Thrasher's Paradise to take a look at what albums are on the horizon for the second quarter of 2022. All that and more next week. Thanks for listening to the Metal Robot Podcast. You can follow the show on the internet, YouTube, Metal Robot Reviews, Facebook and Twitter at The Metal Robot, Instagram at The.MetalRobot. You can also check out everything Metal Robot on TheMetalRobot.com for videos, reviews, press, and so much more. I'm Tom McKay. If you enjoyed this episode and you want more, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcast, and I'll see you in the mosh pit next time. Have a good night.